Welcome, everyone. Just making sure we don't have people stuck in our waiting room. All right, well, welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here, whether you're watching us live here or catching us on the replay. Welcome to this Lunch and Learn on reducing your risk of cancer development and dying of cancer. So for this conversation, what we're going to do is talk about what cancer is. So we'll do a quick Cancer 101. And then we'll talk about prevention versus risk reduction, because those are two different things and they are very powerful things. And it's important to know the difference and how you can protect yourself in both ways. Then we're going to talk about family history, because that's a huge thing in oncology and health and primary healthcare these days. And then we're going to actually debunk some myths around cancer and cancer development. And then we'll specifically talk about the strategies that you can incorporate into your life to reduce your risk of either getting cancer or dying from cancer. All right, so let's rock and roll here. Again, welcome. Let's get this off here. Okay. I'm running the whole show here today, so I'm clicking a lot of buttons here. All right, again, welcome everyone. So I'm Dr. Leslie Welke. I'm the Chief Wellness Officer here at One Village. Pleasure to be with you today. I am a physical therapist, and I specialize in cancer care. So I'm excited to talk with you about this topic today. So cancer really is an abnormal cell, or excuse me, is a normal cell. So a normal lung cell, normal colon cell, normal breast cell that for some reason, as it divides abnormally. Okay. And normally when that happens, our body has a way to those cells either die off or they're killed by our immune system. But in rare cases, those cells do survive and they just continue to grow and divide and grow and divide. And they also have tricky ways of excreting enzymes that allow them to grow faster than normal. And even when they're supposed to stop and die off, they just don't. And then you can see that if these abnormal cells in a colon or a lung continue to grow and divide and grow and divide and grow and divide, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So you can see that if they keep growing and not doing what they're supposed to be doing, that they're going to start impacting the health or the function of that particular organ, which is why cancers can be dangerous. So basically, cancers are defined as continual, uncontrolled abnormal cell growth. Now, there are hundreds of different kinds of cancer. Some are certainly extremely dangerous. Some are literally just a temporary inconvenience. So there's carcinomas, lymphomas, leukemias, lymphomas. They can happen basically in any of our body parts. And again, they're all very, very different from each other. So let's talk about cancer prevention. So really, there's two things that we're looking at. Number one, we want to prevent people from getting cancer in the first place. And then we want to prevent people from dying from cancer. So prevention examples are vaccinations like the HPV vaccine. HPV, we know, leads to many types of cancers. So if you get vaccinated against the HPV virus, the human papilloma virus, you can actually reduce or eliminate your risk of getting that type of cancer. Some surgeries can prevent cancer. So surgeries like mastectomies or removal of the ovaries, if those body parts don't exist in your body, you're very unlikely to get cancer there. And believe it or not, some cancer screenings can actually prevent cancers from developing. So examples here would be a colonoscopy. They go in, they look. Most cancers in the colon start in polyps. So if we can actually remove polyps during a colonoscopy, that actually prevents a cancer from happening in the first place. So some screenings are literally can be preventative. Now, as I mentioned, risk reduction actually, again, aims two ways. Actions are aimed now at either lowering your likelihood of developing a cancer, or secondly, if you're going to get that cancer, we're lowering the likelihood or reducing the risk of you dying from that cancer. So risk reduction examples are cancer screenings. Okay, so mammograms, prostate exams don't decrease your risk of getting the cancer, but what they do is they find it early is the intent. So the earlier cancers are found, the likelihood that you're going to require less treatment, and the less likelihood that that cancer is going to be life-threatening to you. So that's why cancer screenings are so incredibly important. Another way to reduce the risk of getting a cancer is by lifestyle behaviors. So we'll talk those things that we can actually do to help impact our risk. And then understanding your family history. We'll talk about that as well too, because there are some familial cancers or some cancers or people that have a genetic predisposition to certain types of cancers. So understanding your family history, if you have that, some people don't know their family history. But if you do know your family history and you can find out your family history, it is another powerful tool that you have to help reduce your risk of either getting a cancer or dying from a particular cancer. So let's talk about cancer screening. As I mentioned, cancer screenings, their job again is to decrease the risk of dying from cancer. So your mammograms, your prostate exams, your skin exams by your dermatologist. But as I mentioned earlier, some screenings, again, can actually decrease the risk of getting a cancer. So colonoscopies and even cervical exams can find abnormal cells on screening. If you see abnormal cells, we can take those out, and therefore you've prevented the development of a cancer. So cancer screenings are incredibly important for risk reduction and in some cases for actual prevention. So now let's talk about family history, all right? Because we hear about genetics all the time. And genetics actually are an incredibly important part of cancer. But when you talk about gene variations, only about 5 to 10% of all cancers that are diagnosed are linked to a known gene variant or a gene mutation. So when people talk about the breast cancer gene or the pancreatic cancer gene, everybody has these genes, all right? So everybody has the BRCA1 and the BRCA2 genes that are very popular amongst breast cancer. Everybody's got those genes. What some people have is a variation in that gene that stops it from working correctly. And that's the gene variant or gene mutation that makes those people at higher risk of getting that type of cancer. So, for example, the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, their job in the human body is to suppress abnormal cell growth, okay? So if your gene works normally, you get that benefit, right? If you have a mutation in that particular gene, you don't get that benefit, all right? So that's why some people with that particular gene variant will be at higher risk of getting that type of cancer. So, but what I really want to point out with this is that even if you don't have a family history of cancer, right? Because most people don't, all right, you are still at average risk of developing cancer, which means you still need to do all of your cancer screenings that are recommended for you based on your gender, based on your age, And this is why you have to have a really robust conversation with your primary care physician so they know who in your family has or has not been diagnosed with cancer. And they also need to know your age and what are you at higher risk for. So average risk, if you do not have a family history, you are still at average risk and you still must do your screenings. If you do have a bunch of people in your family that have had cancer diagnoses, you definitely want to take that to your primary care physician, and they will most likely send you to a genetic counselor who will look at the pedigree, look at the people in your family. How are they genetically related to you? And what types of cancers are they, and what relatives do they show up in? If there is a risk there, they're like, this is kind of indicative of maybe you might have a gene mutation. Then they will do actually genetic testing. All right, that's where they actually draw blood or take saliva, and they can look at your gene profile. And then based on that answer, they may say, okay, because of this or because of this, you are at high risk of developing these types of cancers. So you're either at average risk if you don't have a family history, or perhaps if you do have a family history, you again need to talk to your primary care physician to see if it is a family history that's relevant or not relevant. All right. And if you do have either a familial history that is relevant, or you do have a known gene variant in one of your cancer suppressor genes, you will probably be recommended a higher level of high risk screening for you. But again, the takeaway point here is everybody is at least at average risk or high risk for cancer development. Okay. So let's talk about debunking some of the myths. And I would love, we've got a small crowd here today. We've got lots of time. So I'd love to hear if you guys have, if you have any other ones that you've heard that I don't cover. So deodorant does not cause cancer. Never has, never will. There's never been any evidence that deodorant has any relation to cancer development. Somebody came up with that theory years ago, and there's just no truth behind it. All right. Cell phones and electrical wires do not cause cancer. There's no relation between power lines, cell phone use, and cancer development. Here's a big one. Cancer or sugar does not cause cancer, nor does it feed cancer. I invite you to join us next month in November for the next Lunch and Learn, where I bring in one of our dietitians here at Lunch Village, and we'll specifically talk about these myths. Because everything you eat, whether it's a protein, fat, or carbohydrate, is broken down by the body into a type of sugar. So everything technically is sugar. So sugar does not feed cancer. It does not cause cancer. But we'll talk about, though, that there is a higher risk of people that are overweight does increase risk for some types of cancers. And certainly extra sugars, extra calories does lead to weight gain, which can lead to increased cancer risk. But again, it's not specifically the sugar that feeds cancer cells. Okay. I also want to point out that organic foods are grown differently than conventional foods. They are not, quote unquote, healthier than conventionally grown foods. They don't reduce risk of cancer any differently than conventionally grown foods do. There is no evidence that the level of pesticides in the foods that we eat have any risk of cancer development, because if they did, we would not allow that. I think, so yes, there are pesticides on our foods, but for example, if you took a typical orange, you would have to eat 87,000 oranges a day, every day, to get enough of that pesticide for it to even begin to cause a risk of increasing your risk for cancer. Again, so don't let yourself get freaked out by that. If you want to buy organic foods and eat organic, that's absolutely fine. But there's no evidence that that is actually healthier or safer for you than conventionally grown foods. And again, there is no evidence that supplements can decrease cancer risk. So again, if you're taking supplements for one particular reason or another, but please don't let somebody sell you something that's supposed to eliminate or decrease risk for cancer, because it doesn't exist. There is no food that can cause cancer. There is no single food that can cure cancer. It's just not that simple. So, as I mentioned earlier, being overweight is directly linked to cancer. Do we understand the absolute mechanism of that? Not really. There's a bunch of theories, but it is clear that being overweight increases the risk of, I think, 11 to 13 different kinds of cancer. We also know that inactivity is directly linked to many types of cancer. And I hate to be the buzzkill here, but we are now finding that alcohol is directly linked to cancer development. Just like if depending on your age, most of us don't remember back in the 50s when literally cigarette smoking was socially acceptable. Physicians actually prescribed smoking for different ailments. They were used to sell cigarettes. And then when we found out that cigarettes were bad for people, the tobacco company really fought that. But eventually healthcare and research won and said, listen, this is bad for people. Everybody now knows that smoking cigarettes is linked to cancer and is not healthy for you. Well, we now know that about alcohol as well. And guess what? Yes, alcohol is trying to fight the tooth and fight the research. They're trying to shape their drinks as healthy and adding all this other stuff to it. But again, please just walk away knowing that alcohol is directly linked to cancer risk. All right. So things that you can do that increase your cancer risk. All right. Again, I want to equate this to like decreasing your risk of dying in a car accident. All right. If you drive intoxicated, if you drive under the influence of some kind of medication, if you are sleepy, if you are texting, if you drive a car that doesn't have good brakes, or you're driving a car that's the tires are low. All right. That doesn't mean that you are automatically going to get into a car accident. All right. On the flip side, you can be sober, you can have your seatbelt on, you can be going the speed limit, you can be following all the rules and still be injured in a car accident. All right. So this doesn't mean completely eliminating risk. It doesn't mean that if you get in a car accident that it is your fault. It doesn't mean that if you are in a car accident and the tires were underinflated on your car, it doesn't mean that the underinflation of your tires caused the car accident. So this is all about hedging your bets and hedging your risk, not about blame. So perfect example is that, yes, about 80% of people that develop lung cancer are smokers. Okay, but on the flip side, 90% of people that smoke will never get lung cancer. All right, so we have to be very careful with stigma and blame around all of this stuff. And also, if somebody develops lung cancer and they are a smoker, there's no way to prove that it was the smoking that caused the lung cancer. So again, this is all about hedging bets and protecting yourself as best possible to minimize your risk of something like this happening. All right. So things that increase risk: smoking, drinking alcohol, being overweight, again, being sedentary, and lack of exercise. And I want to point out another interesting thing. They now are calling it sitting is the new smoking. So for many of us, we are sitting at jobs all day long or sitting at a desk all day long. We're finding out that that's actually really bad for people. And if someone sits for 8 hours, all right, and they go for a run in the evening, going for a run is fantastic, but it doesn't undo the negative effects of sitting all day. So just like if you smoked a pack of cigarettes in the morning and you went for a run in the evening, the running doesn't undo the negative effects of the smoking. So you have to kind of think of being sedentary or sitting just like smoking or drinking alcohol. So what we need to do then is, if you are somebody who's behind a computer screen all day or you're stuck somewhere sitting, is every half an hour we encourage you just to stand up for literally 30 seconds. Move your arms, move your back, twist, move, get your blood flowing a little bit. That does help decrease those risks of prolonged sitting. And again, a lack of exercise also has been shown to increase your risk of cancer. We've talked about either a variation in your gene profile can increase your risk of cancer. And again, sunlight exposure over time can again increase your risk of getting some types of cancers, including melanomas, squamous cell cancers, and basal cell carcinomas. Okay, so now so those are the things that you can do to increase your risk. Now here's some things that you can do to decrease your risk of a cancer exposure, all right? So minimizing or avoiding smoking, minimizing or avoiding alcohol. If you have questions about your level of alcohol, talk to your primary care physician because it's gonna matter on your age, your gender, your family history, what your body weight is. All of those things are gonna factor into how much alcohol is okay for you. All right, obviously avoiding sun damage to your skin. We want to add exercise into your weekly routine. Every human on this planet, regardless of age, gender, and fitness level, should be exercising an hour and a half at least a week. That is the minimum guide that we want people to get to that starts to bumping into saying, okay, this is reducing my risk of cardiac disease, it's reducing my risk of cancer. So yeah, if you're busy and you got a full-time job, you're taking care of a family and a home and you got a busy life, which most of us do, getting in 20 to 30 minutes 4 or 5 days a week, it can be not so easy all the time. But we need to make it a priority because this is literally your life and your body we're talking about. So you have to prioritize exercise as a piece of who you are and what you do. All right. And there's 10,080 minutes in a week. We can certainly carve out 150 of those minutes to protect our health and protect our body. All right. When we talk about diet for cancer risk reduction, it's going to be the same diet plan and food eating patterns that are good for all the other types of illnesses that humans can get. So we are looking for a diet that's high in grains, fruits and vegetables, and lean meats and nuts. So it doesn't mean eliminating, it means making sure you're getting most of your diet most days is of these things, okay? So ice cream doesn't cause cancer, all right? Ice cream, if eaten once in a while, is absolutely fine, all right? Everybody deserves ice cream occasionally. But for people who eat ice cream every day, don't exercise, are not eating grains and fruits and vegetables, that's where you can start to get into trouble. So we don't want to demonize food ever. Okay, what we want to do is make sure that we're targeting the really good stuff for us and making sure that our bodies are getting enough of that. As I mentioned, we want to get on average, again, about 150 minutes per week. That's about 2.5 hours of exercise a week. And ideally, we want you to be doing something aerobic most days of the week. So walking, swimming, cycling, rollerblading, dancing, whatever you like to do. And then about twice a week, every person, whether they're in their 90s or in their 20s, should be exercising with weights or doing some kind of resistive exercise twice a week. All right. And then ultimately, we want you to be following your cancer screening guidelines from your primary care physician. Again, none of this does any good if you aren't in good contact with your primary care physician or your primary care provider. Okay, so to recap, we want to improve both the length and the quality of your life. All right. So how do we do that? You want to, again, get a good PCP. And sometimes depending on where you live, you may get one to pick from. And sometimes you can have 10 or 15 or 20 to pick from. So if you have variability, find a PCP that you can communicate, that communicates well with you, that you like and that you trust and seems to understand who you are and who you're and your life. All right. And then share your family history with your PCP. They should ask, but make sure they know what's going on in your family. And then please just follow your recommended screening plan. Yes, they're annoying. Yes, they're time off of work. Yes, sometimes they have, parking and just all sorts of stuff. But please, 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 that is the best way to help yourself. Again, eat well, exercise well, and again, minimize sun, tobacco, and alcohol exposure. So up on the screen here, we have some of our exercise specialists, our clinical dietitian, and our oncology navigator. So if any of you are having difficulty either with a cancer diagnosis yourself or have somebody at work or in your family, you're welcome to talk to Cindy. And Mandy and Kara are absolutely fantastic as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come off, stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to pop into the Does anybody want to, I'm going to pop into the chat here, but does anybody want to come off of mute and have any questions for me? It's a lot to throw at you in 30 minutes. Was anybody surprised? Yeah, Jessica, go ahead. Was anybody surprised
I
by?
have a question. So, I was wondering, is GLP recommended, even if you don't have a weight issue? So, does that reduce your cancer risk?
Are you talking about one of the medications?
Yeah.
We don't know that yet. It's too young, too early. We assume probably, but we never know until we actually look at the data. So are the people that are losing weight because of the medications that they're on going to have less risk for heart disease, cancer, arthritis, all of the other things that, cholesterol issues, stroke? We don't know yet. We strongly assume that based on data and logical science, but the numbers will tell us in the future. We certainly hope so.
So, if to lose weight what's the best advice? Is that to eat less every day or
The
what?
best advice is to first understand that it is really hard. You go on TV or you go on social media, oh, lose 30 pounds in a week. You can't do that. It is not realistic. All right. So, what we recommend is to literally to losing 1 pound a week is difficult. All right. So literally targeting 1 to 2 pounds a month is realistic. So for somebody who is 20 to 30 pounds overweight or more, you're looking at not weeks or days, or you're looking at years of modifying your eating patterns and increasing your activity levels to lose that weight. So first step is just to be realistic, because if you think this is going to be easy and it's going to be over in a couple months, it doesn't happen that way. It never happens that way. So what we want people to eat. If you're trying to lose weight, increase your fluid intake. All right. Eat more fruits and vegetables, eat more grains. All right. And then slowly just continue to eat what you normally like to eat. Just try to slow back on some of the high calorie stuff that you do. So if you eat ice cream 3 times a week, try twice a week. If you have 2 glasses of wine 5 nights a week, try 1 glass of wine for 3 nights a week. So completely eliminating things that you love or that are socially important to you or a part of your daily routine, whether it's a coffee or something, completely eliminating those things leads to failure. So it's modifying and slowly pulling back because you do have to reduce your caloric intake. You have to burn more than what you take in to lose weight. There's just no other way around it. But trying to completely go, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to eat this way, and I'm going to not eat after this time, and I'm going to do this, that doesn't work. So it's literally modifying over time your behaviors and what you're eating, but still eat the foods that you deserve and that you like. Just has to be less. That's the best. And again, I would highly encourage you to speak with our dietitian crew. They can help you with it. They are absolutely fantastic. Thanks for that question.
Thank you.
I had a few questions.
Fire away.
How about when it comes to like plastics or products that have like PFAs, forever chemicals?
Yeah. Right now, those things certainly exist. They're proven to exist. All right. How much of a risk those things are is really what the debate is. Okay. And again, great conversation to have with your primary care physician, because your gender, your body weight, your age, your family history are really something that matters for you may not completely not matter for me. So I will tell you that if there is something that is at risk for you or the general population, the healthcare providers would be screaming about it. All right. We would know about it. The CDC would do something about it. So those are things that you don't have to completely eliminate, but talk with your primary care physician and see, is this something I need to worry about or not? Because again, you'd have to eat 87,000 oranges a day to be at risk for anything from that particular pesticide. So it's really about risk and it's about exposure to that. But it's not like if you drink water out of a bottle once, you're going to get cancer. Okay. So those things exist, but what the risk is minimal to none over time.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right, I am going to wrap us up. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I will hang out for a little bit longer and answer anybody's questions. I have a few minutes yet. If you'd like to continue to stay on and answer questions, I will be here. Otherwise, thanks, everybody. Have a great Friday and a great weekend. We'll talk soon. Bye. All right, anybody else got some questions?
I have a question. I was curious, but it's related to kind of perimenopause and breast cancer and HRT.
Okay.
Like, for example, I have a mother who had breast cancer, but at 72, and then my dad's side, grandmother at 95. So it's, later. And then
Right.
I took a test with like a breast surgeon, a verbal test, and then they told me I have like a 33 score of high risk, and like something like 25 is the point where it becomes high risk. And so they said they will never recommend HRT, but then there's all these studies coming out that says some people can, and that was, but we don't
Right.
know, blah, blah, blah. Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, what I would do is I would talk again specifically to your primary care physician, and I would talk to a gynecologist because they're really the experts in that. And have you undergone actual genetic testing?
No, they didn't recommend it when my mom had cancer, and it was a non-hormone one. So
Okay. So the fact that you have your mother on one side and your grandmother on the other side, those two are not genetically related, so that's not really technically a family history. I would, and again, it really depends. So I would talk to a gynecologist as well, because it really depends on what is your risk? Is it going to increase your risk by 90% or is it going to increase it by 2%? And then what are your symptoms? I mean, if you are miserable from perimenopausal symptoms, or your bone density is going to crap, maybe you want to try it for a year or two because it's going to improve the quality of your life, but only bump your risk just a little bit. So it's always that risk-benefit ratio game. But I would also certainly talk with a gynecologist about the HRT risk for you because the data is changing as we learn more and get more data. So those are good conversations to have and then even revisit in 3 years because again, we might know more at that point. Does that make sense?
yes, thank you so much. And thanks for the session. It was really helpful.
Very good. Great. Thank you very much.
And actually, one more, if I can, is on alcohol. What is, like, they say it leads to cancer and all that, but why? Is it that it breaks down the DNA, or like what is the
Yeah,
real?
there's going to be different mechanisms for different cancers. So it's not just one answer. Whether it's activity, it changes how the gut can absorb some nutrients and how it does the absorption process, which is how it can impact colon cancer and head and neck cancers that can actually combine with the tobacco to attack different genes. So it depends on the cancer type. How alcohol, and it's actually the acetyl alcohol, the breakdown of the alcohol that's actually more dangerous. So it affects the liver differently than the colon. So every cancer's got a different mechanism, but it is specifically related to that acetyl alcohol that has that risk impact.
Okay, I have 2 other questions, but I see another couple people on here.
Okay, anybody want to jump in? Otherwise, I think those are other people's note takers that are still on.
Okay, well, one is on colon cancer and on cervical cancer. I know at 45, like I got recommended to take you can do the colonoscopy or the at-home box method.
Yep.
I did the box method and it was fine, so they didn't recommend a colonoscopy. But then in talking to other people, they said, "Oh no, you got to get the colonoscopy. That box thing isn't a good indicator." What is
Who's the other people?
friends of mine who
Okay, so I will always say the
medical
only person,
professionals. Just kidding.
yeah, the only person that you should ask and answer that question from is your primary care physician. All right, because this is about your risk, your family, your lifestyle, your gender, your body weight, your risk factors. And again, if your primary care physician doesn't specifically know, you can also talk to, a medical oncologist in that particular area. But your primary care physician is the best person to go to because they will know the answer that for you, somebody's answer might be different Okay. And even somebody who has had colon cancer doesn't make them an expert. So it's always going to come down to your relationship and your communication with your primary care physician.
Okay, and then I think final one is on cervical cancer. They say, I've read that for women who did not have children, the risk could be increased, and that, like, I don't think screening outside of, like, you know, PAPs and things like that are readily available specific to cervical cancer. And so do you have a perspective on requesting additional testing, or how do people even find out if they have it outside of just finding out they have it?
Yeah, again, that's a conversation with your primary care physician. Is like, does my family history or my lifestyle factors, age, gender, number of children, age at the onset of your period, does that put me at high risk of any of these cancers? And if so, what is my elevated screening level? Or am I at average risk, and do I just follow the typical screening pattern? Again, your gynecologist and your primary care physician are the only people that should really be answering that for you. And if they don't know the answer, they're going to send you to somebody who can find that answer for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, I have got to sign off. Thanks, everybody, again. It was great conversation. Appreciate your time. And again, you will get the slides and the recording sent to you in the next week or two. All right, thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.